The death of a loved one is one of the most challenging times that any of us will have to face. And as well as dealing with the grief, there's all too often a bureaucratic mountain to climb as well, sorting everything from the deceased's accounts to redirecting their post. All the more important then that companies make those processes as simple and sympathetic as possible. But you've been telling us that all too often that has not been the case.
You just want to be able to think about your loved one and get on with your grieving and not have people pester you with calls.
We do miss her. She was so special and she was such a huge part of our life. So I'm very annoyed, actually, that we were just so caught up in the admin task.
I personally couldn't understand how it could be so inefficient.
We just got cross. We got really cross.
Losing a loved one is trying enough, but when you're left in charge of taking care of their affairs and it turns into an ongoing battle to close their accounts, grief can very quickly turn into upset and anger. Last year, we visited former pilot Mike Rothwell in Durham, who continued to get letters from an energy company addressed to his late wife 2 years after she died.
There is no flexibility, there's no discretion, there is no compassion or empathy with somebody who's just been bereaved.
Mike did eventually manage to switch the account name over to his own. But even then, the way the company informed him typified the problems that he'd had.
They're welcoming me to my new home, in which I have lived for the last 26 years. It's just totally inappropriate. It's as if she never existed now.
When we last highlighted this problem, we obviously struck a chord with you because we were then inundated with your stories about your experiences. But you also wanted to know what could be done to ensure that there was change in the way that companies dealt with bereaved families when they were not only trying to overcome the loss of a loved one, but also tie up all those loose ends. And it's exactly that issue that has preoccupied Julie Wilson from Seaham in the northeast of England since she lost her 82-year-old mother-in-law, June, in 2019. Paint a picture of her for me. What was she like?
She was warm, she loved hugs, she loved kisses, she loved a really wicked giggle. And she had these huge, big, dark brown eyes and in younger days, this like crown of dark hair, and she wore bright red lipstick, and she used to look in the mirror and go, "Oh, you are gorgeous." So she was brilliant.
Terrific woman. I wish I had a chance to meet her. I think she sounds like a real gas.
She was.
When June died, Julie and her daughter Vicky took charge of sorting out her finances.
It's hugely traumatic, to be honest, because you've got the funeral and you've got everything else to sort out and notifying all of your friends and your family that this person's died.
They set about going through June's paperwork to close her bank account, finalising the utility bills and make sure everything was settled. But it quickly became a source of emotional turmoil and frustration.
I started notifying all of those different companies, having the same conversation. Grandma's died. Very sorry to hear that.
We stood there for 5 solid hours, waiting on the phone line, because of course, whoever you speak to isn't the right person, so that you've got to wait to get put to the right person, and that might take 3 or 4 exchanges through the company, and that's assuming that the call didn't get dropped.
When it came to what the companies needed to close down the account, the pair say there were huge inconsistencies right across the board.
Each company asks for something different, and you're grappling with grief and you're trying to get through everything, and it's just not clear. Some companies need a death certificate. Some companies ask for the actual death certificate. Other companies don't need the death certificate at all.
The whole process of getting June's affairs in order took 6 weeks to sort. Julie says it left no time to grieve or come to terms with losing somebody so close. What was it doing to both of you emotionally, knowing that you were having to deal with the affairs of a much-loved member of your family?
It was horrible. And actually, you don't get to process. You're so busy with the task that actually you don't get a chance to go and sit with someone and, you know, have a hug and have a cry. There's no time to do that.
Did you feel the same way, Vicky?
Yes, but I was also extremely frustrated by just how appalling the service was or how disjointed it was. I was just enraged because, you know, it's just unnecessary.
Listening to Julie and Vicky has brought back memories for me. This is a subject of which I have a little bit of personal experience, because back in 2014, after my mother died, I managed to clear up all of her utility bills and the bank bills, but I still get a letter from one utility company addressed to Mrs. Edna Rippon, care of Miss Angela Rippon. In my case, and Julie and Vicky's, it was the letters through the post that caused the most upset. But increasingly, you're telling us the harder problem to sort is with communications coming via email. Diane Lee from Bradford contacted us to complain about just that after she lost her mum, Irene, to cancer 2 years ago.
I was very close to my mum. She looked after my children when they were little. She liked spending time with the family. She loved the grandchildren. When she passed away, she was in a hospice. It was very difficult. It did leave a big void for everybody.
Diane was put in charge of contacting all of the companies her mother had accounts with and believed that everything was wrapped up. But sadly, not. Irene was still subscribed to multiple email distribution lists.
There were lots of emails coming from various different companies, you know, catalogue companies, pet stores, as well as utility and insurance companies. When you open up the emails and they are still addressed to my mum, dear Irene, your heart sinks because you think, oh, for goodness sake, this has to stop. Eventually, a lot of them did stop. However, there were certain companies who just continued to market my mum.
A year after losing her mum, Diane's dad, Arthur, died too, in January 2020. And to add insult to injury, she then came up against more problems. A utility company was sending emails addressed to Arthur, but to her mum's email account.
British Gas have closed the account. They've taken the final readings off us. They've issued us with a final invoice, but the emails are still coming through. I think it's quite insensitive to still be responding to the people that are no longer with you.
When we spoke to British Gas, it held its hands up, apologising to Diane for having to receive an email addressed to her dad after he had died. It said this had happened because once she'd paid the final balance, an automated email receipt had been generated, but it stressed that no further correspondence had been sent to her since. Stephen Wibberley from the charity Cruse Bereavement Care has seen this problem time and time again when people are trying to close down their loved ones' accounts.
The processes they put in place just aren't geared around the needs of bereaved people. I'm sure none of these companies have set out to deliberately make it difficult for bereaved customers, but I don't think any of them have focused enough on the unique needs of bereaved people.
Stephen, your charity has actually done its own research into this. What did the research turn up?
So we went out and asked over 1,000 bereaved people about their experience of dealing with banks, utilities companies. And whilst there was a very mixed picture, what we found was over a quarter of them said that overall they were dissatisfied with the way they'd been supported. And they were saying it was time consuming, it was upsetting, and a significant number said it was even a traumatic process just passing on that information to those service providers.
And judging by your emails to us, it's the same story again and again. But some of you are not prepared to leave things there, like Vicky and Julie. Appalled at what they had to go through to sort their beloved June's affairs, they set about seeing if they could do better. They got together with a number of leading law firms to create a website that anyone can use to make the process of informing companies easier. And this is what they've come up with. Settled. It'll offer people an account closing service for free, and Vicky is hoping to launch it before the end of the year. Tell me about that, how you established it and what it's going to achieve.
Instead of having to call around 20 different companies, you can upload your details just once and we will do all of the notification for you in one go. So there isn't all of that back and forth churns, multiple calls, multiple emails that we experienced for my nana. So it's just designed to try and make the process far less stressful, much easier for people all around, and also indeed for the organisations on the other side as well.
I've got an energy company, I've got a bank, all sorts of bits and pieces. That's all now entered in here.
Exactly. So we have identified which accounts you have to close, and that screen is showing you a list of all of the accounts that you've told us you want to notify that somebody has passed away. And then what will happen from there is we'll keep you updated, so there's a lifetime tracking element which shows you where your accounts are at any given time.
The family have also set up an online petition asking both industry and government to make changes to the system. They're asking to introduce a time limit for account closures and to standardise the required paperwork. So far, it's received over 88,000 signatures.
We have already got some friendly MPs that are on board, and we've been speaking to various different members of the House of Lords, and they also have gone through this experience. They understand, because actually death touches us all in some respects at some point, and most people have felt the lack of a standard.
Diane in Bradford is fully supportive of what Vicky is doing and is looking forward to the website being launched.
If all that was coordinated to a point where it was just a case of feeding information, then it would just be so much easier on families and allow them to then grieve properly.
Still to come on Rip Off Britain, the cat